Hello, everybody. My name is Sarah Haas, and I am a professor at Rose State College. I teach biology and human anatomy. And today I'd like to give you just a short lesson on viruses. This virus lecture is just for information in the spirit of the pandemic of the coronavirus that has been raging for a while. I feel like people can make better decisions for themselves and for others if they just have a little bit more education on what viruses are, how they replicate, and how they transmit. So just sit back and enjoy, and hope you learned something new today. All right. So first of all, I just want to mention that viruses are microorganisms similar to bacteria, protists, and fungi in the sense that you have to have a microscope in order to see them. Whether viruses are living organisms or not is a bit of a debate among the scientific community because they just don't quite fit in all the parameters that the other three microorganisms involve in terms of how they metabolize and reproduce. But they are small, and you can see them though with a microscope. And so we'll just focus on viruses today. All viruses have two basic structures. They are composed of genetic material, which can be either DNA or RNA, and they have a protein coat. So the definition of a virus is just a particle of genetic material surrounded by a protein coat. Viruses may or may not contain an envelope that is just surrounding the protein coat with other proteins and lipids. Some bacteria, or excuse me, bacteriophages, which are a type of virus, may have other structures as well. It's just interesting about viruses because whether they contain DNA or RNA does have the implication of treatment and vaccine possibilities. Whereas all other microorganisms, the bacteria, fungi, and protists only contain DNA. Viruses are inanimate objects unless they are physically inside of a cell. And this is where it gets a little bit weird on how we classify viruses, whether living or non-living. I'd like to think of viruses as basically like dust, dirt, or rocks, as they simply sit on surfaces, but they only start to spring alive and replicate once they're physically inside of a cell. So you can think of, a tabletop that's covered in dust and debris that we can see with the naked eye, also covered in viruses. So anything you touch in the external environment is going to be covered in viruses. Those viruses, as they are not going to hurt you because they're just basically inanimate objects that will degrade over time. So some viruses can last on surfaces for hours or days. We have some viruses that are locked up in the glacier ice that are slowly being released as the glacier ice melts. You can deactivate viruses with household cleaning items, UV radiation, or heat. But again, for the most part, viruses aren't really there to hurt you. They only become a problem if they get inside your body and then enter your host cells. This is a reminder, though, that it's good to always wash your hands because, if you touch a doorknob, you will have viruses on your hand. And then if you touch your face, you make food, you touch other people, that is one way to spread viruses that can then potentially get inside and make someone else sick. So just be advised that viruses exist everywhere in the environment, but they don't do anything until they're physically inside of a cell. Just some statistics for you. Viruses will infect all living things. So that includes our microorganisms as well as plants and animals. We often don't think of plants as getting infected with a virus, but they can. There are over 300,000 viruses known to infect the 5,200 species of mammals on Earth. And subset of that, we know about 200 viruses that actually cause a disease in humans. That number changes almost, every day based on more research and more novel viruses that tend to pop up. The coronavirus is considered a novel virus because the strain that is currently involved in our pandemic is one that has never been seen before. So it genetically resembles other coronaviruses that cause diseases like SARS and MERS, but genetically it's unique. And so what we are dealing with is a virus that our immune systems have never dealt with before, and that is a reason why it's causing such a wide range of illness. Next time you go swimming in the ocean, all right, it's basically 10 to the 31, so one with 31 zeros after it. That's the number of viruses found in the ocean. Again, most of those viruses are not going to hurt humans, but it just gives you an idea of how many of viruses can exist anywhere on the planet. And because they can infect all life forms, just a reminder that even whales can get diarrhea from a virus. So think about that the next time you go swimming. So how does a virus make more copies of itself? Well, the procedure is called viral replication. Viruses don't reproduce, but they replicate. So it is kind of a small distinction in understanding how they make more copies of themselves. Viruses can only replicate once they are physically inside of a host cell. The cell is extremely specific. So the viruses that invade bacterial cells are different than the viruses that can invade certain human cells. So the host-virus relationship is extremely specific. Once inside, the virus uses the cell's machinery to replicate its own genetic material and then translate that material into more proteins in order to create more viruses. So with this picture, you can think of as one virus can attach to a cell, enters, uses the cell machinery to make more copies, and then that is how viral replication occurs. This process may or may not cause the cell's death. And so that is also a very virus-specific mechanism. So in some viruses like HIV, the cells that are infected with viruses are some of our immune cells, and it actually causes those cells to die. But with other viruses, the viruses just simply replicate, but the cell is left unharmed. So that's kind of interesting. The implication of viral diseases for humans is that the viruses must learn to evade the host immune system as they replicate. You can think of this as a co-evolutionary arms race. If a virus is attacked too easily by the immune system, it won't replicate. If the immune system does not attack the viruses appropriately, the host organism can actually die. So it's almost like a race to see which type of mechanism, viral replication or the immune response, can actually work more efficiently to deal with the organism versus the virus. So it's actually really interesting looking at history of replication versus immune systems. Whenever a virus replicates, a couple of different things can happen. A virus may create mutations within its genetic material, or the virus may recombine its genetic material with another virus. The implication for both of these things is that we get novel viruses pop up periodically that our immune systems have never seen before. Something that is currently concerning scientists is that we have a coronavirus strain circulating the country that is still going to be circulating when we get our seasonal influenza strain circulating. And there's always a risk that two strains of viruses can recombine their genetic material while they are replicating inside of a host cell. And then what you end up getting is even another novel virus that can cause even more havoc. So I'm not saying it will absolutely happen between influenza and coronaviruses, but the risk is not zero. And so that is a reason why scientists are still working very hard to try to find a vaccine or other treatment for coronaviruses, especially before we get into the fall and winter, which is flu season. Of all the viruses on Earth, the ones that are deadliest to humans do tend to come from animals. So certain animals are good vectors for viruses, and then the exposure of animals with other animals and animals with humans can cause these viruses that have been recombined to then spread throughout the human population. So this is just a short list of deadly viruses to humans that all originate in different animals. So as a rule of thumb, the viruses that are most deadly to humans are going to be found in bats, pigs, or primates. Okay, so I mean, of course, other animals can carry deadly viruses, but viruses that can be shared between bats and pigs, or bats, pigs, and primates tend to be the most deadly to humans in terms of how they spread and how many people they can kill. Chickens or other poultry can carry bird flu, which is avian influenza. Bird flu does not tend to spread very much in the human population, but it has a very high mortality rate, which means it can kill people pretty quick. Rodents like mice and rats can carry hantavirus. A human become exposed to hantavirus through rat feces or mouse droppings, or just being exposed to nests, things like that. Skunks in Oklahoma tend to carry rabies. So an animal bite can transmit the rabies virus to a human. Mosquitoes carry all sorts of pathogens, but things like Zika virus, dengue fever, West Nile. So these are some viruses that are carried by mosquitoes. So it is good to be aware that if you expose yourself to animals in nature, be aware that they do potentially carry viruses that can be deadly to you and can be deadly to the human population. To understand how viral infections work, there are two concepts that are worth explaining. The first is called infectious dose, and then we have mortality rate. Infectious dose is the minimum number of viruses that are required to create an infection. So if you have one virus particle in your body, it's not going to replicate fast enough for your immune system to not attack it. So one virus is going to be basically wiped out by your immune system pretty easily. But if you get infected with 1,000 viruses at once, and those 1,000 viruses bind to 1,000 cells and then immediately make copies of themselves, your immune system isn't going to be able to respond quick enough to wipe out all the viruses before they cause an infection. Every type of virus has a different infectious dose. So for example, influenza has about 1,000 viruses that are required to create an infection. You can get 1,000 viruses by walking through someone's sneeze cloud, by being coughed on, by sneezing into your hand, you're dripping with saliva, and then you touch things, okay? Other viruses like Ebola only have an infectious dose of 10 viruses. 10 viruses are not very much, and that is a reason why Ebola tends to be highly contagious, because it just doesn't take many viruses to go from one person to the next. So again, infectious dose is how many viruses are needed to create an infection. The other side you have to consider is mortality rate. So how many people are dying because of the viral infection? Between infectious dose and mortality rate can give you an indication of how much a viral disease is going to spread. So the 2009 H1N1 influenza pandemic had a mortality rate of 0.02%. So that means 2 people out of 100 died of H1N1. Ebola virus outbreak that started in December of 2013 and lasted through 2016 had a 60% mortality rate. So that means 6 out of 10 people died from the viral infection. So taking both into consideration, both H1N1 and Ebola spread pretty easily, because of the relatively low mortality rate. Because Ebola's mortality rate of 60% is less than 90, which is some of the viral outbreaks have in the past. But again, it only takes 10 viruses to cause an infection. With influenza, it takes more viruses, but it's not as deadly. So that's why both of these outbreaks spread rapidly. If the virus kills too many people quickly, there's nowhere for the virus to go. If the virus has a high infectious dose, it takes a lot of people to spread. So the current coronavirus outbreak, so what I've read is it may be 100 to 1,000 viruses is the infectious dose. So it's similar to the flu in that way, but the mortality rate is about 3 to 5%. So that is significantly higher than the 2009 influenza pandemic. So that is why also this pandemic is getting out of control, because it's easily spread, but it's also killing people at a relatively higher rate, which is putting a lot of pressure on our healthcare system. So that again is why scientists are working quickly to try to find an effective treatment and a vaccine. You have a viral disease once the infection manifests. So once enough cells in your body are infected, once enough viruses have been replicated, then the infection manifests to a disease. It's important to pay attention to the symptoms of your viral disease as a way to understand not only how your immune system is fighting it off, but how that virus is being transmitted. So for respiratory illnesses, which includes coronaviruses, the cells that the virus are looking for are along your respiratory tract. And so the symptoms you get are trying to get the virus out of your body. So that's why you sneeze, that's why you have a runny nose, that's why you have a cough. When not only is your body though trying to get the virus out, all of those ways can help transmit the virus to other people. So this is a picture of how far viruses can travel when someone sneezes. And so this is why we are encouraged to wear a mask. Wearing a mask is not 100% going to protect you, but it's going to reduce the number of viruses that you spread to others. And that will help reduce the transmission of coronavirus. Other ways that viruses can get inside of the body: bloodborne pathogens, if you are exposed to someone's blood or bodily fluids that contain viruses. Your digestive system, so you can get viral infections from uncooked food, and then sexual contact. So anywhere you have openings inside of the human body, that's kind of like the welcome mat for viruses to enter. But again, you don't even really know you're sick until enough cells have been infected and enough viruses have been replicating for your immune system to start showing symptoms. So it's really important to listen to your symptoms to not only take care of yourself, but to help to reduce the transmission of the virus. The best way to deal with viral diseases is to prevent them from even happening. So these are just some preventative measures that you can take. Hand washing is a really big deal because, again, viruses exist on surfaces. So if you touch a surface and then you proceed to do whatever else, you are potentially just spreading inactivated viruses from one person to the next that potentially then can get inside of the body. Cooking food properly will deactivate viruses in the food we eat so we don't get sick. Using protective sex mechanisms like condoms provide a barrier to prevent viral transmission during sexual contact. If you are exposed, for example, if you are a healthcare worker and you are exposed to someone's bodily fluid who are positive for a viral infection, you can take medications within a 24 to 48 hour range. And that medication is going to stop the viral replication before it starts. So if you take prophylaxis quick enough, the virus never replicates, and so therefore you never get a disease. And vaccination is also a really big deal. The vaccine purpose is to introduce something similar to the natural virus to cause an immune response. So then when you get exposed to the real thing, your body already has a means to fight it off. And so again, if your body can fight off the virus, you're not going to get as sick or sick, and you're not transmitting it to others. So vaccinations are actually extremely important in managing viral diseases. Once you get sick though, there's only so many things you can do, okay? Antibiotics do not treat viral infections. They are good for bacterial infections, and they're good on some parasitic infections, but they don't do anything for viruses. So some medical professionals like to give antibiotics in case there's a secondary bacterial infection due to your viral disease. Please be very, very careful on doing that, because you may be taking an antibiotic that's killing all of your good bacteria in the body while your body's trying to fight off a viral infection. So it can actually make a situation worse. If you're sick, you can treat the symptoms. That will make you feel better, and it can help prevent transmission. But, you know, allow your immune system to do what it needs to do before you start popping NyQuil. And so, you know, I try to give people advice on go about 24 hours, whether you have a low-grade fever or you just feel a little achy, before you start popping meds, because that will help your immune system learn what to do whenever you get exposed to a virus. Some antiviral medications are effective, things like Tamiflu. If you take Tamiflu in the first 1 to 2 days of exposure to influenza, it will stop viral replication. But if you wait until day 5 or 6, it's not going to do anything. So you almost have to take it after exposure, but before you show symptoms for it to be effective. Things like herpes, you want to reduce or manage outbreaks of the symptoms. So if you don't have a cold sore, you are less likely to transmit herpes compared to if you do have a cold sore. And again, getting vaccinated is a great way to reduce transmission to other people. So don't take antibiotics, all right, for a viral disease, and just take care of yourself, stay at home, plenty of fluids, plenty of rest, allow your immune system to do what it needs to do, because most viral diseases, you're just kind of on your own to try to take care of them, unless the symptoms get so bad you have to seek medical attention. In the United States, there's always going to be a fight between individual freedom and public health. And as we've seen with the current pandemic, you know, things can get out of hand really quick. So you have a person that gets infected with a virus. And what happens is, you know, for whatever reason, they spread it to others. And so you go from maybe 1 or 2 people sick to now you have an outbreak. Maybe it's a restaurant. Maybe it's, you know, a meat packing plant. Well, unless people take a lot of precautionary measures at that point, the virus continues to spread, and now we have an epidemic where it's the entire city or the entire state or the entire region of this viral disease just being spread. And then ultimately what we're seeing is a pandemic, which means it's global. So things can get out of hand really quick if you don't really understand how viruses work, how to protect yourself, and certainly how to protect others. Because if everyone around you is sick with a viral disease, that will absolutely impact your day-to-day life. And so protect yourself, but protect others. And that's really the best way to deal with a viral disease. So here are some references that I used for this little lesson, and hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.